Moon Knight is one of the best DPS heroes you should be playing in Marvel Rivals. Honestly though, his strength is at mid to long range fights and his melee abilities come in second to his projectile damage. Here's how to effectively play Moon Knight and not constantly die. Moon Knight's ability's primary fire is Crescent Dart, which is a triple shot projectile that can bounce between enemies and his ankhs. This deals 25 damage per round and the dart can bounce 3 times when fired. Since Moon Knight shoots 3 darts at a time and can shoot 10 bursts before he has to reload, he has a total of 30 shots, which deals 750 damage if you're able to land each of those shots. Granted, you probably aren't hitting all 3 of those shots since real targets move around quite a lot during matches, but that's what Moon Knight's E ability is for. His E ability is Ancient Ankh, as mentioned before. His projectiles will bounce between his enemies and this stationary point. The Ankh is supposed to draw enemies into its radius to the center of the circle, but honestly don't use it for that purpose. Moon Knight's Ankh is the key to playing his kit to its max advantage. Use the Ankh as a placement for hitting enemies you can't quite get an angle on. If you aim at the Ankh, any enemies within its radius will get hit by your Crescent Dart or Moonblade. Shoot back to the Ankh, then hit the enemy again one more time. If you have more than one enemy in the radius and you aim at the Ankh will slingshot your projectile towards the closest enemy, then the projectile will hit the second enemy and bounce back to the first, dealing double damage to the first target. The Ankh is basically your aimbot tool that you should be placing down around corners you know the enemy team will spring out from, or in clustered team fights, so you can maximize the damage you're doing. You do lose 20% of the projectile damage per bounce, but it's still dealing triple shot damage, so it's incredibly valuable to throwing down Ankhs wherever you can to maximize these shots. You can even stack 2 Ankhs next to each other and increase the bounce back by alternating the Ankhs you shoot at. Moon Knight's secondary fire is Moonblade, a larger projectile that slices through the air and bounces between enemies and Ankhs as well. This deals 80 damage upon hit and loses 20% of its damage each time it bounces between enemies. This should be your follow-up shot if you have a low enemy, your finishing shot basically. Your F ability is your Moonlight Hook. Use this to reposition yourself early on in fights or use it when you need to retreat. While the hook is good, I always prefer using his double jump ability whenever I can, since it's so much faster than waiting for the hook shot to touch a surface. Using Moon Knight's Night Glider, your shift ability is key to getting to the point faster or rotating around. Use this to move faster at the start of a round or when you need to get out of an ultimate that has contact with the ground, like Jeff the Shark's ultimate. If you time it right, you should be able to get away from being damaged and land safely after. Moon Knight's ultimate is called Hand of Khonshu. This ultimate is pretty easy to dodge, so knowing when to use it is key. It takes you about 1.5 seconds to actually get the ultimate to activate once you select the location you want it to bombard, so try to guess where enemies will be in those seconds so you can time it just right. The ultimate lasts 3 seconds and deals 75 damage per hit, with 10 Khonshu Talons dropping total in its duration. So the ultimate can do about 750 damage maximum if each shot finds a target. Note that this is basically what landing all 30 shots of Moon Knight's primary fire can deal. Since Hand of Khonshu is fairly easy to dodge, I mean, you can literally just walk out of it, I would recommend using this in really clustered fights to deal extra damage, or use it as a way to open a path to your objective or clear the objective. Since enemies will be running to escape its radius, it'll force them to move away from the position you've placed it in. This can be a great way to give your team an opening to breach their team. If you're able to get a Cloak and Dagger player on your team, you will get the team up ability, Full Moon. You can put down a sphere that will render you invisible for 6 seconds. The cooldown is pretty hefty at 30 seconds, so I'd recommend only using this if you really need it, but honestly, it's not the best useful team up I've seen. Since the radius of the sphere is fairly small, it's easy for enemies to guess where you are and hit you. However, it can be good for opening up a push for the objective and give you and your teammates a second or two of an advantage if you pop the invisibility field and dash in. Moon Knight is an incredible DPS hero who can absolutely shred enemies with his ridiculous 3-shot burst darts. Just remember to play him at a distance since his projectiles do take a second to deploy and actually reach their targets. You can throw Ankhs down pretty far, so it's to your advantage to throw Ankhs anywhere you can and hit those from a distance, rather than being up and in the enemy's faces all the time. If you do get into a tough situation, grapple or double jump and glide away if you're able to. But ultimately, no one should be able to get close to you since you can shred them without them even laying a hand on you. Moon Knight is especially good against Iron Fist and other melee or close-ranged heroes since they have no avenue of throwing you out with long-range fights. It'll take some getting used to, but just remember, throw ankh, aim at ankh, and praise the ankh. Anyways, let me know how you liked this guide and who you want to see me cover next in the next hero guide.